5 minutes after my husband signed our divorce papers, I buckled our two children into a rented SUV and drove north without looking back. Evan had not read page 6. He had been too busy checking the time. At 10:30 that morning, his pregnant mistress was waiting for him at a women's clinic across Columbus. His mother was carrying a blue baby blanket embroidered with the words Whitaker Legacy. His sister had brought a silver frame for the ultrasound photograph. They believed they were about to celebrate the child who would replace the family Evan had already abandoned. At 10:47, the doctor stepped into the waiting room holding a sealed laboratory report. Evan's mother stood up smiling. The doctor did not smile back. A few minutes later, the blue blanket was lying on the floor. Evan's mistress was crying in the hallway, and his phone was ringing with news about the house he had promised her. By noon, the future they had already framed, embroidered, and posted online was beginning to collapse. I did not witness any of it. By then, my children and I were crossing the Ohio state line with 3 suitcases in the back, a box of crackers between the seats, and my father's brass house key in my coat pocket. My 10-year-old son Ben sat beside the window with his headphones around his neck. He was not listening to anything. My 7-year-old daughter Sadie had fallen asleep hugging a stuffed fox and a framed photograph she had taken from her grandmother's hallway. It was the last picture in that house that still included the 3 of us. I kept both hands on the wheel. I did not feel victorious. I felt terrified, but I kept driving. 8 months earlier, Ben had run into our kitchen holding his tablet as though it contained an emergency. It was a Sunday afternoon in January. Snow had been falling over Columbus since breakfast, soft enough to look beautiful and steady enough to silence the street. Chicken and dumplings simmered on the stove. Sadie sat on the floor dressing her stuffed animals in doll clothes and deciding which ones were allowed at dinner. Evan was supposed to be in Indianapolis meeting a landscaping supplier. At least that was what he had told me. Mom, Ben stopped in the kitchen doorway. He was still wearing his winter coat. Snow had melted into his dark hair. What happened? I think I saw Dad. My hand stopped above the cutting board. Where? Yesterday when we drove past those new houses. The previous afternoon I had taken the children to a science museum program. On our way home we passed a new housing development north of the city. Ben loved photographing construction sites. He said he wanted to understand how empty fields became neighborhoods. He unlocked his tablet and handed it to me. The photograph had been taken through the rear passenger window. A man stood outside a furnished model home beside a woman in a cream-colored coat. His face was turned slightly away, but I recognized his dark green field jacket. I had given it to Evan for Christmas 2 years earlier. The woman had both hands wrapped around his arm. Behind them, a real estate agent was locking the front door. I enlarged the image. Evan's wedding ring was visible. So was the woman's face. Kelsey Ray, 29 years old. Marketing coordinator for Whitaker Outdoor Living, the landscaping and patio company Evan had inherited with his younger sister Paige. Kelsey had attended our company Christmas party 6 weeks earlier. She had hugged me near the dessert table and told me she admired how I managed a business, a marriage, and 2 children. I had thanked her. Now she was looking up at my husband like a woman who believed she had already won him. Is that Dad? Ben asked. I think so. Then why did he say he was in Indianapolis? I don't know yet. Who is she? She works with Dad. Ben studied the photograph. She's holding him like you do. I placed the tablet face down on the counter. Can I keep this for a while? He nodded. Then his voice became smaller. Am I in trouble? That question hurt more than the photograph. No, you did nothing wrong. I wasn't spying. I know. I was taking pictures of the houses. I know that too. He looked at my face. Are you mad at me? I put both hands on his shoulders. Never for telling me the truth. When he left the kitchen, I searched the development name visible on the sales sign. Willow Creek Estates. The house in the photograph was a 4-bedroom model with gray siding, white cabinets, a finished basement, and a fenced backyard. One listing photograph showed a nursery painted pale blue. Starting price $389,000. I closed the website and opened our banking app. For almost 2 years, Evan had controlled most of our finances. That had not always been the arrangement. Before marrying him, I worked as an office manager for a heating and cooling company. I understood invoices, schedules, payroll vendors, and cash flow. After Evan's father died and Whitaker Outdoor Living expanded, Evan asked me to leave my job and help with the family company. "It'll only be for a year," he said. "We need someone we can trust." A year became 9. I scheduled crews. I handled angry customers. I followed up on unpaid invoices. I ordered materials. I fixed payroll errors. I answered calls while nursing a baby and prepared estimates after putting the children to bed. On company brochures, Evan was president. Paige was design director. Kelsey eventually became marketing coordinator. My name appeared nowhere. At family dinners, Evan's mother Marlene referred to the business as what my children built. If I mentioned the years I had spent running the office from our dining room, she smiled. "You helped." Helped. That was the word they used whenever the truth became inconvenient. I had helped with the company. I helped Marlene after her knee replacement. I helped Paige plan an engagement party and then helped her cancel it when her fiancé left. I helped host every Thanksgiving. I helped organize Walter's funeral. But I had apparently built nothing. That Sunday, I looked more carefully at our savings account. There were transfers I did not recognize. $9,000 in October, $12,000 in November, several smaller transfers in December. Each was labeled as equipment or supplier expenses. Together, they totaled almost $48,000. I checked the company records I could still access from my laptop. No matching equipment had been purchased. No supplier invoices explained the withdrawals. At 5:36 that evening, Evan came through the back door carrying an overnight bag. "Roads were awful," he said. He kissed the side of my head without looking at me. His jacket smelled faintly of cedar perfume. Kelsey wore cedar perfume. Sadie had mentioned it at the Christmas party because she said Kelsey smelled like a fancy pencil. "How was Indianapolis?" I asked. "Long." "Did the supplier agree to the new pricing?" "We're still discussing it." "Which supplier?" He paused with his back to me. Then he named a company we had stopped using 8 months earlier. I watched him take a beer from the refrigerator. The lie did not explode. It simply settled into the kitchen between us. I wanted to throw the tablet onto the table. I wanted to demand the truth. Instead, I looked toward the living room where our children were choosing a movie. If I confronted him before knowing how much money was gone where we could live, and whether he might empty the accounts, I would be giving him time to prepare while I remained trapped. So I served dinner. I listened while Evan complained about traffic. I helped Sadie cut her dumplings. After everyone went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning tracing every transfer I could find. The next morning I called Ruth Calder. Ruth had been my father's closest friend for nearly 40 years. They met as young teachers in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My father taught woodworking and basic home repair. Ruth taught English and later became a principal. She was 70 now, widowed and direct enough to make dishonest people nervous. At my father's funeral 4 years earlier, Ruth had pressed a small brass key into my hand. "Your father wanted you to keep this," she said. The key belonged to a narrow brick bungalow near Riverside Park. My father had grown up there. For years, he rented it to an elderly couple. When they moved into assisted living, the house sat empty. Evan wanted me to sell it. "It's 5 hours away," he said. "It needs work. The company could use the money." I had almost agreed. Then I remembered something my father once told me. Everybody needs one door in this world that opens because their own name is on it. I kept the house. Evan called it my sentimental money pit. When Ruth answered my call that January morning, her first question was not about Evan. "Are the children safe?" "Yes." "And you?" "I don't know." "Tell me what you do know." I told her about Ben's photograph, the missing money, the model home, Evan's lie. She listened until I finished. Then she said, "You are not imagining this, Natalie." My eyes filled before I could stop them. "And you are not overreacting." I pressed my hand against my mouth. Those were the 2 sentences I needed most. "Can we live in Dad's house?" I asked. "The roof is sound. The furnace is old. The kitchen looks like 1994 refused to leave. But yes." "Could the children start school there?" "Yes." "How soon?" "As soon as you need." I stared at the snow outside our kitchen window. For the first time, I pictured something beyond the end of my marriage. A red brick house, my father's workbench in the garage, a front door that Evan could not tell me to leave. "I may need time." "Take time," Ruth said. "But don't use time to talk yourself out of what you already know." She helped me find a family attorney named Dana Lewis. Dana's office was small and plain. No dramatic promises, no speeches about destroying Evan. She asked what I wanted. "My children need to feel safe." "What else?" "I want to move to Michigan." "Do you have somewhere to live?" "I own a small house." "Does Evan know?" "He knows it exists. He thinks I would never go." Why? Because he thinks I can't manage without him. Donna looked at me. Can you? I thought about the cruise I had scheduled, the bills I had solved, the children I had raised, and the emergencies I had handled while Evan took credit. Yes. Then that is where we begin. She told me what records to copy and which accounts I needed to understand. She told me not to involve the children in adult details. She also told me something I never forgot. Preparation is not cruelty. It's what you do when honesty is no longer safe. For the next 8 months, I prepared. There were no dramatic secret meetings. There were school lunches, laundry piles, and dentist appointments. I copied statements after the children went to sleep. I photographed invoices while pasta water boiled. I drove to Grand Rapids twice under the excuse of checking on my father's house. Ruth helped arrange repairs. We replaced the furnace. We painted the children's rooms. Ben chose dark blue. Sadie chose yellow, then pink, then finally pale green. I updated a resume that appeared to have an 11-year gap because the work I had done for Whitaker Outdoor Living had never been formally acknowledged. At first I wrote, assisted with family business administration. Then I deleted it. I wrote the truth. Managed schedules for 4 crews. Handled customer accounts. Coordinated suppliers. Prepared payroll reports. Resolved service complaints. Built office systems that helped a 6-person company grow to almost 30 employees. When I finished, I stared at the page. For years, I had allowed Evan's version of my work to become my own. I sent out applications. 3 companies rejected me. 2 never replied. A nonprofit home repair organization in Grand Rapids called Harbor Home Project invited me to interview. They repaired roofs, heating systems, and wheelchair ramps for elderly and low-income homeowners. The interview was held over video from a study room at the local library. I sat in my car for 20 minutes beforehand with both hands gripping the steering wheel. I nearly drove home. I had not interviewed for a job in more than a decade. I could hear Evan's voice. You answered phones from home. No one will pay you for what you think you did. I called Ruth. I can't go in. Yes, you can. I'm going to embarrass myself. Maybe. That's not helpful. You might stumble over an answer. You might hate your blouse. You might walk out convinced you failed. She paused. But none of that will be worse than letting Evan decide what you're capable of. I went inside. The director, Camille Ortiz, asked how I handled angry clients. I listened for the problem beneath the complaint. I said, people don't always begin by telling you what they're really afraid of. Camille smiled. That answer sounds lived in. It is. She offered me an operations coordinator position beginning in September. The salary was modest. It was also mine. I accepted it in my own name. Then I returned to my car and cried so hard I could not drive for 15 minutes. During those months, Evan's affair became less careful. Kelsey appeared at more family dinners. She began posting photographs from company events in which Evan's hand rested on her back. Marlene welcomed her with a warmth she had never shown me. She remembered Kelsey's coffee order. She saved her a seat beside Evan. She introduced her to church friends as the young woman helping Evan bring the business into the future. That word appeared often. Future. As though Ben, Sadie, and I belonged to a season the Whitakers had already decided was over. The family photographs in Marlene's hallway began changing too. First, she removed our wedding portrait. Then Ben's school photograph disappeared. Sadie's kindergarten picture was moved to a low shelf near the laundry room. At Christmas, Marlene mailed cards featuring herself, Evan, Paige, and Kelsey in front of the showroom. The card read, Merry Christmas from the Whitaker family. I held it up to Evan. Your children are missing. It's a business photo. It says Whitaker family. You're looking for something to be upset about. That was how Marlene and Evan hurt me twice. First with what they did. Then by treating my reaction as the real problem. In December, Marlene hosted a holiday brunch. Kelsey arrived carrying handmade ornaments. There was one for Marlene, one for Paige, one for Evan, one for herself. None for Ben, Sadie, or me. Oh my gosh, Kelsey said when Sadie noticed. I only made them for the people involved with the company. Dad's involved with our family too, Sadie said. The room went quiet for half a second. Marlene laughed. Of course he is. No one offered to make the children an ornament. On the drive home, Sadie asked why Kelsey's name was hanging beside Daddy's. Evan turned up the radio. That evening I confronted him. Why is Kelsey at every family event? She's helping with the spring campaign. She made herself an ornament for your mother's house. You're jealous of a piece of wood. She excluded your children. It was company related. At a family brunch, You make everything exhausting. He dropped his keys on the counter. Kelsey understands how much pressure I'm under. You turn every little thing into a trial. She is not your wife. Evan looked at me with a coldness I had not seen before. Not yet. The words hung between us. He could have taken them back. He did not. A week later, he missed Ben's science fair because Kelsey was hosting a company event at a brewery. Ben stood beside his project for 2 hours, looking toward the door every time someone entered the gym. He said he'd come, he told me. I know. Did he forget? I don't know. Evan arrived home after 10. Ben had already gone to bed. You missed the science fair, I said. The brewery event ran late. He waited for you. I have a company to run. You had one evening to be his father. Evan removed his coat. Ben isn't interested in the company anyway. What does that have to do with anything? He's different. He's 10. He doesn't like sports. He doesn't like being outside. He'll probably want nothing to do with landscaping. So, Evan opened the refrigerator. So maybe the next child will. I stared at him. He had not yet told me Kelsey was pregnant, but his expression told me he knew exactly what he had revealed. The next child. He closed the refrigerator door. I'm tired, Natalie. Is Kelsey pregnant? He picked up his beer. We'll discuss it when I'm ready. You just told me. No, you heard what you wanted to hear. The next morning, Evan left before the children woke. 3 weeks later, Marlene announced the pregnancy on Facebook. The photograph showed her holding an ultrasound printout beside Kelsey. Evan stood behind them with one hand on Kelsey's shoulder. The caption read, "A beautiful new chapter for our family. Some blessings arrive exactly when they are needed." I learned at 8:12 on a Tuesday morning. Ben learned before lunch. A mother at school asked whether he was excited about becoming a big brother. His teacher called me because he had locked himself inside a restroom stall and refused to come out. When I reached the school, he was sitting in the counselor's office with his backpack on his knees. He held himself together until we reached the car. Dad is having another baby. Yes. With Kelsey. Yes. Did everybody know except us? I don't know. Grandma knew. Yes. Aunt Paige knew. I think so. Did Dad know? The question was so innocent I almost could not answer. Yes. Ben wiped his face with his sleeve. Is that why Grandma took our pictures down? I turned toward him. What pictures? He told me that during his last visit, the large beach photograph had been removed. So had the picture of Walter holding both children. In their place was a new photograph of Evan and Kelsey standing outside the model home. Beside it sat the ultrasound picture. Marlene had told him she was making room for the future. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. You already looked sad. My son had been protecting me. I am the adult, I said. You never have to hide something to protect me. Does Dad still want us? There are questions a mother should never have to answer for a father sitting 15 minutes away. He is responsible for showing you that. That's not an answer. No, I said, it isn't. That afternoon, Sadie spilled milk across the kitchen table. I had been reading messages from Dana, answering work emails and trying to reach Evan. The glass tipped over. Milk ran across Ben's homework and dripped onto the floor. Sadie, I shouted. She froze. I said to be careful. Can't anyone in this house just listen to me? Her face crumpled. The second the words left my mouth, I heard how much they sounded like Evan. I knelt beside her. I'm sorry. She stared at me. I'm not mad about the milk. Then why did you yell? Because I'm scared and I took it out on you. Are we in trouble? Number. Is Dad leaving? I sat on the wet kitchen floor and pulled her against me. I think he already has. That night, after the children were asleep, I called Ruth. The worst part, I whispered, is that I still miss him. Of course you do. I hate myself for it. You don't miss the man he is now. You miss the man you believed you married. What if that man was never real? Some of him was real, that's why it hurts. I cried into a dish towel so the children would not hear. Ruth stayed on the phone until I could breathe normally again. 3 days after the pregnancy announcement, Kelsey texted me. Evan wants a clean transition. The children will still have a father, but everyone needs room to adjust. Please don't use them to make this ugly. I read the message twice. Then I answered. My children learned about your pregnancy from a stranger at school. Do not lecture me about making this ugly. Kelsey began typing. Stopped. Then sent. No one is replacing anyone. We're just making room for the baby. Making room. The same phrase Marlene had used while removing my children's photographs. I took screenshots. An hour later, another message arrived. He said she won't fight. She doesn't even know where the down payment came from. A second message followed immediately. Sorry, wrong person. There was no other person who would have understood that sentence. The down payment, the model home, the missing savings. I searched county property records and recent sales at Willow Creek Estates. The house on Alder Ridge Drive was under contract. The buyer's mailing address connected to Whitaker Outdoor Living. Evan was buying Kelsey a house with money he had quietly taken from us. That Sunday, Marlene demanded that I attend family dinner. We need to behave like adults for the children, she said. Kelsey was already seated when we arrived. She wore a white sweater and rested one hand on her stomach. Marlene had placed handwritten cards at every seat. Mine said Natalie. Kelsey said, Mama Kelsey. Sadie read it aloud. Why does that say Mama? Marlene reached for the gravy. It's something sweet. She's not my mama. No one said she was, Kelsey replied. The card says it. Evan put down his fork. Sadie, stop. I can read? Paige lowered her eyes. Kelsey turned the place card face down. I don't want anyone uncomfortable. She said it like she had accidentally spilled water, not arrived at a married man's family dinner with a card calling herself Mama. Marlene touched her arm. You've done nothing wrong. Sadie's eyes filled. I looked at Evan. He sighed. Please don't start a scene. She is 7, I said. She needs to adjust. To what? Our lives are changing. Your life changed because you cheated. Their lives changed because you lied. Marlene's face hardened. Not in front of the children. You displayed an ultrasound where their pictures used to hang. I was making room. Sadie looked at Kelsey. That's what she said too. The table went silent. Halfway through dinner, Marlene began discussing baby names. She liked Walter for a boy. Your father would have loved that, she told Evan. Ben's fork stopped moving. Walter was already his middle name. Grandpa's name is already in the family, he said. Marlene gave him a thin smile. This would be different. Why? Evan answered before she could. Not every child wants to carry the business forward, Ben. I'm 10. I know. I might like it later. You don't even like being outside. Ben looked down at his plate. I could see the exact moment the sentence entered him. Not as information, as rejection. Enough, I said. Evan leaned back. You always shield him from reality. He is your son. And the baby is my child too. Kelsey looked at him. So did Marlene. Sadie began crying quietly. Evan pointed toward the hallway. Natalie, take her somewhere and calm her down. I stood. I'm taking both children home. You always run when you lose control of the room. I helped Sadie put on her coat. Ben was already standing. At the hallway entrance, I saw the new family wall. Our beach photograph was gone. Walter's photograph with the children was gone. My wedding portrait was gone. In the center hung a large framed picture of Evan and Kelsey standing outside the model home. Behind them, a sign read sold. Sadie stared at it. That's Daddy's new house. No one answered. She walked to the bottom shelf and picked up a small framed photograph she had made for Marlene. It showed the 5 of us at the zoo 2 summers earlier. Sadie tucked it beneath her coat. I'm taking my family back. Marlene looked offended. That was a gift. You don't want us on your wall. I was reorganizing. You put her in the middle. Sadie pointed at Kelsey. Kelsey's face tightened. No one is replacing you, sweetheart. We're only making room for the baby. Sadie held the photograph tighter. There wasn't room for my picture. Kelsey had no answer. Behind us, Evan said, This is exactly what I mean. You turn the children against everyone. I opened the front door. No, Evan. They are finally old enough to understand what you were hoping they wouldn't notice. It was the first time I left Marlene's house without apologizing. 4 days later, Paige asked to meet me. We sat in a coffee shop near the hospital. She kept her coat on. I found something, she said. What? Dad left Evan and me a company reserve account. I know. Half was mine. I waited. He used $62,000 toward the Alder Ridge house. The amount was larger than I expected. He took from you too. Paige stared at her coffee. I thought the money had been moved into company accounts. Why are you telling me? Because I'm angry. At what he did to me. She did not answer. At what he did to your father's money. Nothing. At what he did to you. Yes. The honesty was ugly, but at least it was honest. You watched him humiliate me. I didn't know everything. You knew about Kelsey. Her eyes lifted. How do you know? Because you never looked surprised. She looked away. I saw her leaving his hotel room at a trade show almost a year ago. And you said nothing. He told me you were privately separated. You could have asked me. I was afraid of what would happen to the business. There it was. The business. The family name. Walter's legacy. The excuse they used whenever my pain became inconvenient. You protected the company, I said. I thought I was protecting Dad's work. No, you protected the life you had. I was simply the person expected to absorb the cost. Paige's eyes filled. I know. You spoke now because he took from you. Yes. She did not soften it. That was the first honest thing a Whitaker had given me in months. I need copies of the transfers, I said. I'll send them. Do not expect forgiveness because you finally became uncomfortable. I don't. She sent the records that afternoon. Dana reviewed them. She told me the missing money could be addressed in the divorce without turning our case into a courtroom spectacle. The money Evan spent from our savings would count against his share. The house purchase would have to be disclosed. The children's arrangements would remain separate. That was all I needed to understand. Evan had taken money from me. He had taken money from Paige. He had used it to buy a home for Kelsey, and he believed none of us would stand together long enough to stop him. By July, the divorce was underway. Evan moved through several versions of the story. First, there was no affair. Then the relationship began after our marriage was emotionally over. Then I had driven him away. Then he had wanted to stay for the children, but I had become impossible. Marlene repeated his version at church, at the hair salon, and to anyone who would listen. She called me jealous. She said I was using the children as weapons. What she did not mention was that Evan missed 6 scheduled evenings with them in 2 months. He missed Sadie's spring music program. He called 40 minutes late on Ben's birthday. When Sadie phoned him one night with a fever, he whispered, "I'm at an important dinner," and ended the call in less than a minute. I stopped making excuses for him. That was when the children began seeing him clearly. One afternoon, Marlene arrived at our house without warning. Boxes filled the living room. "So it's true," she said. "What is? You're leaving Ohio." "Yes. You cannot take those children away. The move has been included in every proposal. Evan said you would get scared." I looked at her. "He said that. He knows you." "No, he knows the woman who kept making his life easier." Marlene stepped inside. "Where will you live?" "In my father's house. The Michigan place." "Yes. That little house is not suitable. The doors lock. The school is good. The children have bedrooms. You will come back." There was no concern in her voice, only certainty. She needed me to fail because my failure would prove the Whitakers had been right about me. "You're enjoying this," she said. "Enjoying what?" "Having power. For 11 years you confused my patience with having none. You are breaking this family. Your son began replacing us before he had the courage to leave. Kelsey is carrying an innocent baby. So was I when you told Evan not to let fatherhood interfere with the company. That was different. Everything is different when it happens to someone you value." Her face tightened. "Evan said you barely contributed to the business. Then he should have no trouble without me. You always needed recognition. No, I needed respect. To you, they are the same. They only look the same to people who refuse to give either." She left without saying goodbye. That night, I found an envelope beneath the front door. Inside were 2 photographs Ruth had mailed. One showed the bungalow after the front steps had been repaired. The other showed my father's workbench beneath a new garage light. On the back, Ruth had written, "The door is ready whenever you are." I placed the photographs inside my desk. Then I packed another box. The week before mediation, Evan became strangely pleasant. He brought groceries home. He asked Ben about school. He promised Sadie ice cream after the paperwork was finished. He wanted the divorce signed quickly because Kelsey's house closing was approaching. He also wanted everyone to believe he had handled the transition maturely. On Sunday evening, he stood in the kitchen while I washed dishes. "Let's not make Tuesday harder than necessary." "I agree. Kelsey has an appointment afterward." "I know. They're getting the test results." "What test?" "A prenatal paternity test." "Why?" "Kelsey wants everything official." "Does she?" He frowned. "Don't start." I asked one question. "She's been under a lot of stress because of you." I turned off the water. "Your pregnant mistress is stressed because your wife filed for divorce." "You know what I mean." "No, Evan, I don't think I ever did." He checked his phone. "I need to be at the clinic by 10:30. Our mediation starts at 9. Then don't drag it out. The children's beds were moved yesterday." His head lifted. "What beds?" "Their beds. To Michigan. You have had the relocation proposal for 11 weeks. I thought it was negotiation language." "It is in the agreement." "You're actually going?" "Yes." For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Then his phone buzzed. Kelsey's name appeared. He answered immediately. Even while learning that his children were leaving the state, his attention went to her first. The night before mediation, Ben stood in his nearly empty bedroom. Only his mattress remained. Does Dad know we're going? He has the paperwork. Did he read it? I don't know. Will he stop us? I don't think so. Why not? I sat beside him on the floor. Because stopping us would require him to pay attention. Ben leaned against my shoulder. Neither of us said anything else. The mediation office was in a plain building near downtown Columbus. Gray carpet, a long table, a coffee machine humming near reception. I arrived at 8:40 with the children. Evan arrived at 9:07. Marlene came with him. Paige followed several steps behind. Evan checked his watch before sitting down. Marlene looked at the children but did not hug them. Why aren't they in school? They are leaving today. You could have let them say goodbye properly. You had 8 months. Dana reviewed the final terms. The Columbus house would be sold. The remaining savings would be divided after accounting for the money used on Alder Ridge. I would have primary custody. Evan would have scheduled calls and extended school break visits. I could establish the children's primary home in Grand Rapids. No complicated language. No hidden meaning. Dana slid the parenting section toward Evan. This confirms that Natalie may move the children to Michigan. His phone vibrated. He glanced at the message and smiled. Fine. Please read the full page. I understand. You are also acknowledging that most of the children's belongings have already been moved. Evan looked at me. You moved them before I signed. You knew the date. Marlene leaned forward. You said she wouldn't actually do it. Mom, you said she would panic. Evan did not deny it. He checked the time again. Can we finish? He signed each page quickly. The house, the money, the parenting schedule. Page 6. Relocation. He did not read it. When it was my turn, I read every line. Then I signed. The meeting ended at 9:54. Evan stood immediately. I need to leave. Ben looked up. Dad. Evan paused. My son waited for a hug, a question, a promise, anything. Evan glanced at his watch. I'll call you later, buddy. Then he walked out. Marlene followed him. At the door, she turned toward me. You think you've won? Number. You'll understand when the children start missing their real family. Sadie looked up from her coloring book. We're her real family. Marlene stared at her. Paige closed her eyes briefly. I took both children's hands and walked out. The September air carried the first hint of fall. Our rental SUV waited at the curb. Ruth had arranged for our boxes to leave the day before. I buckled Sadie into the back. Ben climbed in beside her. Before I closed his door, he looked toward the building entrance. Is Dad coming out? He has another appointment. The baby. Yes, Ben nodded. Not because he understood, because he was learning not to expect more. I closed the door and drove north. While we headed toward Michigan, Evan drove across Columbus to Northside Women's Health. Kelsey was already waiting. She had requested the prenatal paternity test 2 weeks earlier. According to Paige, Kelsey presented it as proof that she had nothing to hide. Evan loved gestures that made him feel chosen. Marlene arrived carrying the blue blanket. Paige carried the silver frame because her mother had placed it in her hands in the parking lot. I had spent so long doing what was easiest, Paige later told me that carrying that frame felt like one more small act of cowardice. The waiting room had gray chairs and framed photographs of sleeping babies. Kelsey wore a cream coat. When Evan arrived, she smiled. Marlene hugged him. Free man, she whispered. No one mentioned Ben or Sadie. No one asked whether they had left safely. The family had already assigned everyone a new role. Kelsey was the new beginning. The unborn baby was the future. My children were an inconvenience attached to the past. A nurse called Kelsey's name. Evan entered the examination room with her. Marlene and Paige stayed outside. Marlene arranged the blanket over the empty chair beside her and photographed it. She began writing a caption. Today our family finally moves forward. 20 minutes later, the ultrasound was complete. The baby had a healthy heartbeat. Kelsey cried. Evan recorded a short video of the screen. Then Dr. Shaw entered holding a sealed report. She sat down. The laboratory completed the prenatal paternity comparison you requested. Kelsey reached for Evan's hand. The pregnancy appears healthy, Dr. Shaw continued. However, the genetic markers do not support Evan as the biological father. Evan's hand went still. Kelsey looked at the ultrasound screen. The baby is not mine, he asked. The probability of paternity is effectively excluded. Run it again. The laboratory repeated the comparison before releasing the result. They made the same mistake twice. We can arrange an independent test. Evan turned toward Kelsey. Tell her. Kelsey's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Tell her the dates are right. Evan, the dates. There may have been some overlap. The room became silent. Evan stood. What does that mean? Kelsey pressed a hand against her stomach. Before you left Natalie, we weren't exclusive. I bought you a house. I didn't ask you to. You chose the cabinets. You said you wanted us to have something permanent. Whose baby is it? I don't know for sure. Evan walked out of the examination room. Kelsey followed him into the hallway. Marlene stood smiling at first. Well, Evan kept walking. Kelsey stopped near the waiting room door. Marlene looked between them. What happened? The test excluded him, Kelsey whispered. Marlene's hand tightened around the blanket. That's impossible. Kelsey began crying. You told us this was his. I thought it was. You thought? Evan turned around. Whose is it? There was someone else. Who? A man I dated before. Before. Kelsey looked at the floor. Sometimes after. Marlene stepped away from her. You used my son. That was when Paige stood. Number. Everyone looked at her. We are not pretending Evan is the only person who was deceived. Stay out of this, Evan said. I stayed out of it when you lied to Natalie. Not here. I stayed out of it when Mom removed Ben and Sadie from her wall. Paige. I stayed out of it when you brought Kelsey to family dinners while your wife was still living in your house. Evan moved closer. I said not here, and I stayed quiet when I found out you used Dad's money. Marlene went still. What money? The reserve account. That belongs to the company. Half belonged to me. Evan's phone began ringing. He ignored it. Marlene looked at Paige. What did he do? He used $62,000 from Dad's reserve toward Kelsey's house. Kelsey stopped crying. She looked at Evan. You said that money was yours. The phone stopped. Then rang again. Evan looked at the screen. The call came from the credit union handling the house closing. He answered. Paige could hear only his side. Yes. A pause. I signed this morning. Another pause. What adjustment? His eyes moved toward Paige. No, that account was supposed to remain available. He turned away. What do you mean the funds aren't there? The money Evan expected to use at closing had been reduced under the divorce settlement he signed without reading. The lender had also learned that part of the down payment came from Paige's disputed reserve funds. The closing was being stopped until Evan could replace the money. He ended the call. Kelsey stared at him. What happened? The house is delayed. For how long? I don't know. You said everything was settled. The baby isn't mine. That doesn't answer the question. They looked at each other without the fantasy that had brought them together. Kelsey had believed Evan was a successful man choosing her. Evan had believed Kelsey was carrying his second chance. Neither had truly known the person standing in front of them. Kelsey removed the ceremonial house key Evan had given her before closing. She held it out. Evan did not take it. The key fell onto the carpet. Then his phone rang again. This time it was the company bookkeeper. Payroll was short. 3 customer deposits had been used to cover unrelated expenses. Several employees were expecting checks that afternoon. Evan pressed one hand against the wall. Marlene sat down slowly. The blue blanket slipped from her hands and landed over the empty silver frame. That was how Paige later described the scene to me. A family legacy embroidered on a blanket, an empty frame waiting for a photograph, both lying on the floor. I knew none of it while it happened. At 11:15, Sadie woke and asked whether we were still in Ohio. Almost out. Is Michigan another country? Ben looked at her. Number. It has different lakes. So does Ohio. Not the same lakes. I smiled despite myself. We stopped at a highway rest area for sandwiches. When I checked my phone, there were 17 missed calls. 9 from Evan, 4 from Marlene, 3 from Paige, 1 from an unknown number. Evan's messages read, "Call me immediately. What did you do to the money? You planned this. You turned Paige against me." Not one message asked whether the children were safe. Marlene wrote, "Whatever happened today destroying Evan hurts your children too. You need to come back so we can discuss the company." Paige's message was different. The test said the baby is not his. The house closing stopped. I told them about Dad's money. I'm sorry. I should have spoken sooner. I put the phone face down. Ben watched me from the back seat. Is Dad mad? Yes. At you. He's looking for somewhere to put his anger. Did you do something bad? Number. Then why is he blaming you? Because blaming me is easier than admitting what he did. Ben looked out the window. Is that why we're leaving? It's part of it. What's the biggest part? I looked at both children. You should never have to compete to be loved in your own family. Sadie hugged her stuffed fox. Will the new house love us? Houses can't love people. Then who will? I will. Ben looked at me. And Ruth. And us. I smiled. Yes, and you. We returned to the highway. My phone continued vibrating inside my purse. I did not answer. We arrived in Grand Rapids shortly before 6. Ruth stood on the bungalow's front steps, wearing jeans work boots and one of my father's old flannel shirts. She hugged the children first. Then she held out the brass key. Your door, she said. My hand shook as I placed the key into the lock. The house smelled of fresh paint, old wood, and the cinnamon candle Ruth had lit in the kitchen. Our furniture had arrived. Boxes filled the dining room. Sadie ran upstairs to find her green bedroom. Ben moved more slowly, touching the stair railing, as though confirming it was real. On the kitchen counter sat a note. You are not starting with nothing, you are starting with yourself. I read it twice. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor and cried. I cried for the marriage I had believed in, for the children who had learned to expect less from their father, for every dinner where I swallowed my answer, for every photograph removed from a wall, for the part of me that still missed Evan even after everything he had done. Ruth sat beside me. She did not tell me to calm down. She did not say everything happened for a reason. She put one arm around me and let me cry. Upstairs, Sadie shouted that her room had a secret shelf. Ben called from the garage because he had found my father's workbench. Life was already asking us to continue. Ruth stood and held out her hand. Come on, your children need dinner. That night we ate casserole from paper plates because I could not find the silverware. Both children slept on mattresses beside my bed. At 2 in the morning, I woke to find Ben sitting near the window. What's wrong? I thought I heard Dad's truck. There was no truck, only a car moving along the wet street. Will he come get us? Number. Are you sure? Yes. Are we okay? I looked at the boxes and the old wallpaper. We're getting there. 3 weeks later, Paige came to Grand Rapids. We sat in the backyard while Ruth took the children to the library. Paige told me what happened at the clinic. The doctor, the hallway, Kelsey's confession, the phone call about the house, the missing payroll. When she finished, her coffee was cold. I should have spoken sooner, she said. Yes. I knew about Kelsey for almost a year. I know. I saw her leaving Evan's hotel room at a trade show. And you came home and sat at my table. Yes. Why? I was afraid of what would happen to the company. I looked toward the garage. You were not neutral, Paige. I know. You chose the side that required nothing from you. I know. She swallowed. I did not speak when he hurt you. I spoke when I learned he had taken from me. The sentence was ugly. It was also honest. I will regret that for the rest of my life. I did not forgive her that day, but I believed her. That was a beginning. What happened to Kelsey? I asked. She left Columbus. And the baby, the other possible father, is someone in Cincinnati. Does he know? I don't know. The company. We closed the second showroom. Some employees left. I'm trying to keep the original location open. Why are you telling me? Because Evan is telling people the company failed after you stopped helping. I almost laughed. He told everyone I barely helped. I know. He cannot have both stories. I told him that. Paige looked toward the house. I reviewed 9 years of records. Your schedules, customer systems, and crew plans are still running the company. I know what I did. I didn't. You didn't want to. She accepted the answer. I am sorry. An apology does not restore access to my children. I understand. If they want to see you, it will happen slowly. I'll wait. This time Paige did. The following months were not a victory montage. They were ordinary and difficult. I made mistakes at work. I scheduled 2 crews for the same job and spent an hour fixing it. Camille did not humiliate me. She asked how we could prevent it from happening again. Kindness felt suspicious at first. At Whitaker Outdoor Living, every mistake became a judgment about who I was. At Harbor Home, mistakes were problems to solve. Ben joined the science club. Sadie made friends with a girl 3 houses away. Ruth came for dinner every Wednesday. Evan had video calls scheduled for Tuesdays and Saturdays. He missed the first Tuesday. He called late on Saturday from his truck. Ben showed him a wooden tray he had begun making at my father's workbench. Looks good, Evan said. Grandpa's tools are here. I know. Why didn't you ever bring me? We were busy. Sadie held up a drawing of the new house. It showed herself, Ben, and me beneath the maple tree. There was another figure near the mailbox. Is that me? Evan asked. No, Sadie said. That's the mailman. The call lasted 7 minutes. Afterward, neither child cried. Their disappointment was becoming quieter. That worried me more. Thanksgiving was the first holiday I did not spend at Marlene's house in 11 years. I cooked in my father's kitchen. Ruth came. Camille and her wife came. Ben prepared the salad. Sadie shaped dinner rolls into objects she claimed were leaves. At 4:12, Marlene posted an old photograph online. It showed the Whitaker family at Thanksgiving 6 years earlier. I was visible at the edge carrying a serving dish. The caption read, "Missing the days when family still meant loyalty." An hour later, she called Ben. I heard only his side. "Number, we already ate. Mom cooked." A long pause. Then, "We didn't leave Dad alone. He stayed there." Another pause. "Grandma, don't talk about Mom like that." I stepped into the room. Ben held up one hand. "No, she didn't tell me to say it." He listened. Then his voice cracked. "You took my picture down." He ended the call. His hands shook. I hugged him. "She said you broke Dad." "What did you say?" "That you didn't make him do those things." That sounded like a 10-year-old, and it hurt more than any speech could have. The children began seeing Paige once every few weeks. At first 1 hour at a park, then lunch. She never demanded affection. She arrived on time. She did not criticize Evan or Marlene in front of them. Trust grew slowly. In February, 1 week before Ben's 11th birthday, Evan called. "I want to take the kids to dinner." Ben agreed after speaking with his counselor. Sadie said she would go only if I stayed. Evan objected. I refused to negotiate. We chose Riverside Grill, a family diner near the park. Vinyl booths, paper placemats, a glass case filled with pies. Public enough to discourage shouting, ordinary enough that the children would not feel trapped. Evan arrived 15 minutes late. Marlene was with him. I had not invited her. She carried a leather folder beneath her arm. My stomach tightened. Evan hugged Sadie. She kept her arms at her sides. He hugged Ben. "You've gotten taller. It's been 5 months." Evan cleared his throat. Marlene leaned down to kiss Ben's cheek. He turned away. "I suppose your mother told you not to hug me." "Number. Then why?" "I don't want to." I slid into the booth beside Sadie. Evan and Marlene sat across from us. The waitress brought menus. For several minutes, everyone discussed food because food was safer. Evan ordered a burger. Marlene complained about the coffee. Sadie colored her placemat. Ben stared at the menu without reading it. Finally, Evan placed a narrow box on the table. "Happy early birthday." Inside was an expensive smartwatch. Ben looked at it. "Thanks. You can use it to stay in touch with me. I already have a phone." "This is better." "Do you know what I asked for?" Evan hesitated. "Some computer thing. A microscope." "I can get that too." "You don't have to. I drove 5 hours to see you." No one had criticized the drive. Evan offered effort before anyone could examine what he had actually done. The food arrived. We ate in strained silence. Then Marlene placed the leather folder beside her plate. "Natalie, we need to discuss something." "Number. You don't know what it is. You brought documents to Ben's birthday dinner. It is not his birthday until next week." Ben looked at her. "That makes it okay." Marlene ignored him. "Whitaker Outdoor Living is having a temporary cash problem. That is not my responsibility. It affects your children's future. My children's future is not a landscaping company." Evan lowered his voice. "We need a short-term loan." "Number. You haven't heard the amount." "Number. The Michigan house has no mortgage." Sadie stopped coloring. I looked at him. "You researched my house. It appeared in the divorce records." Marlene pushed the folder toward me. "No one is asking you to sell it. It would only be used as temporary security." I did not touch the folder. "You came to your son's birthday dinner to ask me to risk the house where he sleeps." "That's not what this is," Evan said. "What is it?" "Protecting the family business." "Whose family?" "Ben and Sadie are Whitakers." "Then why were their pictures removed from the Whitaker family wall?" Marlene's face tightened. "We have discussed this enough." "No, you explained it. We never discussed it." "Adults sometimes have to sacrifice for family." Ben looked at the folder, then at his grandmother. "Why is it always our stuff?" No one answered. "Our pictures had to go." His voice shook. "Mom had to leave the company. We had to leave the house. Now you want this house too." Ben Evans said this is an adult conversation. "Then why did you bring it to my birthday dinner?" The table behind us became quiet. The waitress slowed near our booth. Marlene lowered her voice. "You don't understand what is at stake." Ben looked directly at his father. "Did you come to see me or get Mom's house?" The whole diner seemed to go silent. Evan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Ben pushed the smartwatch box across the table. "I don't want it." Why? Because it's not what I asked for. I said I'll get the microscope. That's not what I mean. His voice cracked on the final word. The diner door opened. Paige walked inside carrying a small birthday gift. Ben had invited her separately. She stopped when she saw Evan and Marlene. "What are you doing here?" Evan asked. "Ben invited me." Her eyes moved to the leather folder. "What is that?" "No concern of yours," Marlene said. Paige picked up the first page before her mother could stop her. Her expression changed. "You asked Natalie to use this house for the company." "It's temporary," Evan said. "Her children live here." "My children," he replied. Paige looked at him. "Then why are you trying to risk their home?" "Stay out of it." "Number." The word was quiet, but it contained every word she had failed to say for years. Marlene reached for the folder. "Sit down. People are staring." "They should." "Paige, you came to Ben's birthday dinner with loan papers. We are trying to preserve your father's legacy." Paige laughed once. "Dad's legacy." "Yes, Dad's legacy was not stealing from Natalie to buy Kelsey a house." A man at the next table looked over. Marlene's face reddened. "This is private. You made Natalie's humiliation public for months." "Lower your voice." "You posted the ultrasound before Ben knew about the baby." "Paige, you removed the children's photographs." "I was reorganizing." "You put Kelsey in the center." "That is enough." "No, I watched all of it and stayed quiet. That was enough." Paige turned toward me. "I will regret that for the rest of my life." I held her gaze. Hearing her say it privately had mattered. Hearing her say it in front of the people she once protected mattered more. Evan leaned forward. "You have no idea what happened in my marriage." I knew enough. "You're trying to steal the company. Half of it always belonged to me. If you care so much, finance it yourself." "I already used my savings to pay the employees whose checks bounced." "That was your choice." "Yes, because they have rent and children." "So do I." Paige looked at Ben and Sadie. "Then start acting like it." Evan sat back. Marlene looked at me. "Are you really willing to let Walter's company disappear?" I folded my napkin beside my plate. "Walter began that company with one truck and a reputation for keeping his word. He was your children's grandfather." "Yes." "Then help us." My father left me one ordinary house, not a fortune, one house with a small kitchen and an old workbench. I looked at Ben. He left it so his daughter and grandchildren would always have somewhere safe to go. Then I looked at Evan. "I will not risk that door to rescue the man who pushed us out of his life." Marlene's eyes filled. "Family is supposed to forgive. Forgiveness is not renewed access. You would keep children from their grandmother. I will keep them from being treated like placeholders." I never called them that. "You didn't need the word." Ben slid out of the booth. "Can we go home?" "Yes." Sadie took my hand. Paige placed the leather folder in front of Marlene. "Take it with you." As we walked toward the exit, the diner remained quiet. No one applauded. No one needed to. The silence was enough. Outside, snow had begun falling. Ben and Sadie walked toward our car. Behind us, the diner door opened. "Natalie." Evan stood beneath the awning without a coat. Snow landed in his hair. I lost everything. Once those words would have made me rush toward him. That night they only made the truth clearer. "No, Evan." He stared at me. "You spent it." His face tightened. "Money, trust, time with your children. You spent all of it because you believed there would always be more." He looked through the window at Ben. "Do they hate me?" "They're hurt." "Can you fix that?" There it was. The old expectation. Natalie would explain. Natalie would soften. Natalie would carry what he had dropped. "No," I said, "that belongs to you." I got into the car and took my children home. A week later, a package arrived for Ben. Inside was a microscope. Not the most expensive one. Not professionally wrapped. A note was taped to the lid. "I should have asked what mattered to you. I'm sorry, Dad." Ben read it. Then he placed it in his desk drawer. "Are you going to call him?" I asked. "Later." "That's okay. Do I have to forgive him?" "Number. Can I?" "Yes." "What if he does it again?" "Then you pay attention." Ben adjusted the microscope lens. "So forgiving someone doesn't mean giving them the house." I smiled. "No, it does not." Evan began attending more scheduled calls. Not all of them. More. He visited the children in April and stayed in a hotel. He took them to the Science Museum and returned them on time. One good weekend did not prove he had changed. But it gave the children one memory that did not hurt. Paige continued visiting slowly. One Saturday, she brought Walter's old metal toolbox from the company warehouse. Inside were carpenter pencils, worn screwdrivers, and a small level with his initials scratched into the side. I think this belongs here, she told Ben. Did Dad say I could have it? Paige looked at him. It belonged to Grandpa. Your dad does not get to decide every part of what Grandpa left behind. Ben carried the toolbox to the garage. Paige did not ask whether she was forgiven. She simply showed up again when she said she would. 1 year after we moved, Ruth arrived with a box of photographs. We should finish the hallway, she said. I had left most of the wall empty. Part of me still associated family walls with judgment. Who belonged in the center? Who was moved to the bottom shelf? Who disappeared when someone new arrived? Ruth spread the photographs across the kitchen table. Ben at the science fair. Sadie planting tulips. The children beside my father's workbench. Camille's staff picnic. Paige holding a burned birthday cake. Ruth laughing on the porch. A photograph of my father standing in front of the bungalow 40 years earlier. And our arrival day picture. My eyes were swollen. Sadie's hair was tangled. Ben looked exhausted. But all three of us were there. Sadie chose a picture of herself and Ben. This one goes in the middle. Why, Ben asked. Because we live here. Simple. No child competing with another. No future baby replacing a present one. No family name deciding whose face deserved the center. We hung the children's photograph in the middle. My father's picture went beside it. Friends and people who had earned a place in our lives filled the spaces around them. That evening, I packed lunches for the next day. Ben came downstairs searching for his notebook. Sadie followed with one shoe untied. I can't do this one, she announced. You tied it yesterday. Yesterday was easier. I crouched and tied the lace. Ben found his notebook beneath a stack of mail. Mom, yes. Are we okay? He had asked the same question on our first night in Michigan. Back then, I told him we were getting there. Now I looked around the kitchen. Homework covered the table. A utility bill waited near the toaster. A broken crayon lay beneath a chair. Nothing was perfect, but no one had to compete for love. No one's photograph had to disappear to make room for someone else. Yes, I said. We are. Ben studied my face. Children know the difference between comfort and truth. This time he heard the truth. He nodded and followed Sadie outside. I stood on the porch beneath the maple tree and watched them walk toward the school bus. For years, the Whitakers spoke about legacy as though it were a company sign, a surname, a baby boy, or a photograph placed in the center of a wall. They were wrong. Legacy is the way children remember feeling in your presence. It is whether they felt safe, whether your promises meant anything after the conversation ended, whether they had to become smaller to keep their place in your family. I once believed leaving meant I had failed to keep my family together. Now I understand that I did keep my family together. I simply stopped including the people who kept tearing it apart. So tell me this, if your ex-husband came to your child's birthday dinner carrying loan papers for the house where your children finally felt safe, would you have given him one last chance? Or would you have taken your children home and closed the door for good?